What does it take to fight justice when the system itself is stacked against you? In this episode of Women as Agents of Change, you'll meet a woman who spent her life answering that question with her actions, her voice, and her unshakable belief in dignity.
We need to amplify the voices of Palestinian women because the situation we're living in is a genocidal crimes committed against civilian population, which should not be accepted by humanity, not by law even, by humanity.
Randa Siniora is the General Director of the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling in Palestine. She's not only documented human rights violations, but she's challenged them at the United Nations.
We have to keep the energy and the passion and conviction that we can influence change. And that's what I always say to the younger generation, that you are the force that's going to continue the path that we've started.
From standing against gender-based violence to advocating for equality under military occupation, Randa's work reminds us that activism isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, even when the odds are overwhelming.
Social justice is calling for women's rights. We are mostly affected by absence of equality and social justice.
This is not just a conversation, it's a call to witness, a reminder that even in the most contested spaces, women are rising, demanding change, and refusing to be erased. Welcome to Women as Agents of Change. Here is Randa Siniora. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Women of Agents of Change podcast series. I am your host, Liza Florida. And today this podcast series, Women of Agents of Change, is brought in partnership with the International Peace Bureau and 8 Billion Podcasts. Today, I am deeply honored to have a very special guest, Randa Siniora. So welcome, Randa, to the Women of Agents of Change podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Lisa, for hosting me in this podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. It really is a pleasure of mine. And I know it's an honor on behalf of International Peace Bureau and, of course, all of us at 8 Billion Podcast. Now, what I'd like to do is, if you could, Randa and I'm just speaking to the audience. Randa and I have had a chance to actually meet prior to the interview, so I have a greater sense of her background and to be able to deliver her story. But what I'd like for you to do, Randa, is if you could take us through a background of yourself, and then we'll go ahead and jump into more of the questions in the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Randa Siniora. I am a feminist human rights activist, a Palestinian woman from Jerusalem. I come from a upper middle class Palestinian family who lives in Jerusalem. And I've been in the field of human rights since my beginning of my career. I always fought for gender equality and women's rights in line with the general human rights issues. And all the time, I think that I'm doing this work with a lot of passion and with a lot of, I always say I'm very lucky. I have chosen a kind of job that is really passionate, and that many times I feel like I was born to do this work. And I grew up in an extended Palestinian family. And that has really shaped a lot of my life and how I see myself now. And with its nice parts, mostly nice. I always have good memories of my childhood, and with also some, of course, challenges. And but I think that I am what I am because I was given the opportunity to express myself, to be articulate. To speak out my mind, despite all the challenges that we might face in a patriarchal society. So this is generally who I am.
Yes. No, thank you for bringing us through that background. Randa and I got to dive deeper and about her upbringing, her relationship with her father, her family, the dynamic. So I'm hoping to really dive into that today. But Randa, you shared a powerful story about your family fleeing West Jerusalem in 1948. How did growing up with legacy of displacement shape your worldview as a child?
It was always coming up in every discussion we had with our families, with our guests from the country, from abroad, from everybody we meet. My mother is known to have a very strong memory. And she was in her late 18, 19 years old when the war broke out. And she was always bringing up the stories of how they fled their homes in West Jerusalem, in a neighborhood, a neighborhood, a wealthy one, rather wealthy one in West Jerusalem where they used to live. And she always brought that memory, and we had to go all the time to tour with the car when we had guests to show our home, which is still existing until now, with my father's factory being changed into a coffee shop now. And my mother's home was also, she was a neighbor of my father and a close friend of his sisters, my aunt. And therefore, they were used to live very close to each other. The two families knew each other, and they visited visited each other. And my mother's home, a huge home in also a neighborhood in West Jerusalem called Qatamon, where currently the Israeli Knesset exists or stands. It's a very beautiful part of West Jerusalem. So always we are proud that we are Jerusalemites. And even my mother used to tell us more. My mother used to speak about it because her father was a contractor. Who constructed most of the homes in Qatamon al-Baqa and al-Baqa. They are two neighborhoods in West Jerusalem, and she knows the homes. She knows when he built it, who used to own it, and that really shaped our feelings that we belong to that place, to this country, which my father and my grandparents were living in it, and my grandparents as well. So it is always in our memory. We always remember the homes, the nice neighborhood. There was a very nice garden with a nice church near my mother's home, and it's still existing there. So it's when she was still without, dementia. Now she is very old, and when she used to remember, she used always to feel proud to take us around and to tell us who owned that home and that other home. So we always felt that we belong to this place. And we wish we could go back to our homes, because what we know is that these homes were they fled the homes when there were some of the gangs coming in and vandalizing and killing people and so on, Jewish gangs at the time. And they just fled for their safety. And they used to check on their homes on regular basis every week until we were not able after 1948 to return to those homes, to our homes. And that remained with us because 1967 is the time when I lived in also another war where many people fled their homes to Jordan and other parts of the surrounding cities, especially to Jordan. And I was one of the young kids who fled my home. My mother and my grandfather from my father's side insisted that we shouldn't leave because they had the memory of 1948. But unfortunately, the domination of my uncles, living in an extended family, my father wasn't able to make it home. He had to hide in a convent near our factory in Old City, Newgate, because he was in the factory working. My family owned the first meat production factory in Palestine since 1920. And therefore, my father wasn't able to make it home. I think if my father was there, he would have not allowed us to leave the country again, because 1948 was a very difficult experience to all of us. But luckily, my father stayed. after we all fled our homes again in 1967. And he was able to bring us back to the country within a couple of months before the borders were completely closed between Jordan and Jerusalem or the West Bank.
I found that very interesting when even we were speaking when we first met about your extended family structure. How did that shape your sense of community and gender dynamics?
Very much, very much so, because we had a very nice community. My family always celebrated the major, feasts and so on together, and it was a distribution of work among my mother and her sisters-in-law. I had 4 uncles. And my father, so 5, and my aunt and my grandfather. So this is really a community life where you do everything with the family. My grandfather used to sit on the top of the table, on the top in the morning, and we wouldn't start eating until everybody was around the table. Of course, that really gave the sense of belonging, the sense of that we are one family, that what hurts me hurts anyone in the family. And among my my siblings and my nibblings, if we can say, we were mostly girls. We were 11 girls and 5 boys. So that really meant that boys were more favorable, and they wanted to. The family wants them to carry the name of the family, to continue with the business of the family. So we felt that. Because we are more girls than the boys in the family, that when a baby boy is born, they look at it in a much more nicer way. Although they welcomed us into the family, of course, and they love us and so on. So I was like the third daughter to my parents and to the family. My father had the 2 daughters, my 2 sisters, and then a brother, and then another. It was me. I was supposed to be a boy, but I was born to be a girl. And that's why my father wanted the balance. I always felt that they wanted me to be a boy, but I came to be a girl. Of course, that being said, made me really very noticing that a son among 4 sisters, because we are 4 sisters, is my brother would go his way more than we do. And therefore, I was always the advocate of my sisters and my other cousins, girl cousins, that girls are as equal as boys, and that we don't want them to pamper or really give more attention to the boys. So I was always called by my father as the advocate, and he said, I'm sure one day you will become a lawyer because you argue your case, and I think that you are born to be a lawyer. And I always said yes. We have to defend our rights. So I was defying any kind of discrimination, subtle or obvious, in a way or another, in order to establish that girls have the same rights as boys. And within a patriarchal society, despite the fact that we are a Christian family, we are part of the Palestinian society, we're part of patriarchal structures in our society, and we're not different than other for example, my Muslim friends who were living in almost the same environment, where the boys were more favorable in families because they carry the name of the family, and usually the family hopes that they inherit. The girls can inherit, but they can inherit movable property, and not, for example, the factory. For in my case, in our family, or the homes that the extended family live in. We can think of other places, of other ways, to alternatives to be given our share of the property, but not in the solid property that the family had that should really be given to the boys in the family. Of course, we changed that. We changed that because my younger daughter, my younger sister, was born after 8 years after me. That was after we returned back from 67 war, and it was not an intended pregnancy. So my mother didn't want to have the child. But my uncle, my elder uncle, had no children. And he said that you want to make an abortion and I don't have children. Why don't you give me the born child? So my father was a generous man and immediately said, yeah, why not? And my mother went through the pregnancy, and why my sister was adopted when she was 40 days by my uncle. That was a pleasure to me because I got rid of her. I stayed as the younger baby in the home. And I do remember carrying her bed and just trying to, enjoy that I will stay the youngest. The bed that I used to sleep on, I gave it up because that will give me the pleasure of being the youngest in the family. But that was not the case. Being in an extended family, we lived with her, and she knew about the adoption at an early stage. Of her early age. She was only 2 to 3, she started to know. And we continued to be with her, especially me and my brother. And we grew up together. And she ended up inheriting my uncle and staying in the extended family home and inheriting the property of the family. But we had to look, the family gave us other alternatives when my father passed away and so on. So it's like patriarchal structures really are very much deep rooted in our societies. And that doesn't matter if you're a Christian family or a Muslim family, or even to that and a Jewish family. Anywhere where you are, if patriarchy stands, the power relations entails that some of the cultures and norms stay within the society and very much entrenched in the society, not allowing, for example, equality as a concept to nourish and to unless you fight for that. And I think this is what I did.
And that's beautiful. Randa, thank you so much for sharing all of that, because Randa and I actually went through this in our introductory meeting, and she shared so many stories that she's bringing forth with you guys today, so you'd have an understanding of her background. Her and I have very similar upbringings, where we have an endearing relationship with our father, where both of our fathers thought, my father also thought I would go into law. It's true, Randa actually went into law. I took a different direction into business. But here we are at this juncture talking about gender equality. In fact, two other things that Randa shared with me was her childhood upbringing and her defiance as she stood up for girls, even defying cultural norms and wearing shorts. So do you remember that, Randa, when you talked about
Yes, I really do remember it very well. It wasn't the problem with my father. It was with his cousin, who used to work as an accountant on a gas station on the corner of near our home. And I used to go for sports when I was 6, 7, 8. And I used to wear my shorts and or to summer camps and so on. And every time this conservative family member, my father's cousin, would come and tell my father, we live in a very conservative society. The girls should not go out with the shorts. And she sometimes put her manicure and pedicure, and I see it on her nails and so on. And it's not good for you. So my father would come and tell me, This is what happened. So the next day, instead of listening to what he said to me, I would just wear my shorts and intend to take the bus from the other bus stop in order to pass his office and show him, show him that I'm wearing my shorts, and then take the bus from the second. Also, my father encouraged me to speak out my mind. And when he's visiting, he will tell me, my cousin is visiting. I'll tell him, okay, I'll go and put my shorts. And then I'll come in and start to speak about girls' rights, and tell him that there should be no, I would defy him openly. I used to like acting, and then I will make small plays in front of him. And my father would encourage me. My father wasn't that, he was more, more conservative with my two sisters. But with me, I built a very good relationship with him. My sisters used to obey him. Like if he said the patriarchal power of the father in the family, and if they needed something, they go to my mother and please use your good offices. Your place in the to take the right. Me, it was different. I always said, my mom would say, I'm not going to open this topic with your father. And then I told her, I don't need you. If I need something from my father, I go directly to him. And so I used to go to him directly and ask whatever I want. And he would say, no. I said, no to your sisters. And why should I say yes to you? I would say, my sisters are free to do what they want. But to me, if you say no, you have to tell me why. And if you convince me, I will submit. So I used to argue my case and convince him that I could go that place, I could wear this thing, I could make this thing, I could sleep over at my friend's home, my closest friend's home, because that was a taboo to my sisters, but not to me. And I used to really argue my case. And then at the end, he would tell me, I don't know why I got into this conversation. I should have accepted your said yes at the beginning, because you convinced me you should become an avocado to defend yourself. You know it very well, and you will make a very good advocate. And I turned out to be a very good advocate.
You became an excellent.
And I like it. So now, at work now, as a director of the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling, we have different programs. We have the services, we have the community-based programs, we have the advocacy programs at the national and international level. And most of the time, my passion comes up, it's seen as if I'm biased to advocacy. Influencing and trying to come up with the new mechanisms, innovative ways of doing work. And I think I utilize that experience always to bring up new ideas with my with the team, with the staff at the organization, with my colleagues, and so on. And this is an added value, I think, that my colleagues feel it. But it also shows that when it comes to services, I know that individual services, the social workers, the lawyers know how to litigate the cases in the courts, how to provide counseling. They are experienced social workers, psychosocial support. They know it well. But when it comes to advocacy, of course, I have also an experienced and professional staff, but my passion comes up very strongly on that. And I come with very nice ideas and engage much more. So in a way or another, I'm biased to advocacy. And I think that we can influence, and we are agents of change. And I believe I always didn't want, even when I was younger in my career, I worked with WICLAC, with the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling, as the head of the networking and advocacy unit. It was in my early career, in my late 30s. And in fact, every time there was a problem and they were compromising to defend the right of the individual woman, victim of gender-based violence, I would say that is really compromising over changing policies, changing legislation. And always I thought that real change comes of course, it makes a very big difference. And I know that now that for the individual, but the individual could not change the world. We should change policies, legislation, try to influence decision-making persons, be in decision-making processes to be influential. But at the same time, serving the individual is also as important, because what it might never mind for me as an individual. I wouldn't affect others, but if you help thousands of women who are marginalized and discriminated and victims of violence, you are serving also the community and making change to their lives, which is a huge development and a huge change that many of my colleagues are experts in how they do it.
Yeah, no, Randa, I could definitely feel it. Your passion, you're absolutely a force to reckon with. And as we said earlier, International Peace Bureau, my good friend Michelle said when Randa actually gets on stage and she speaks, she has the attention of the crowd. And you could feel it. I could sense that with all the women of Agents of Change, they've got this underlying force about them that really was innate since childhood. And what I'd like to do, because we are going to cover a lot of your professional work currently today to talk about the innovative structures that you're implementing, you have an incredible academic journey from Jerusalem to Cairo and then to the UK. How did these diverse cultural and educational experiences shape your identity in activism?
Very much so, because even every time I've been in a journey to continue with my studies, I've met people. I started to be tolerant to different cultures, to different contexts, and in that sense, even when I came back, I came more tolerant to other people who are not the same as me. It's not. We have to understand that within different cultures and within different societies and communities, being also trained at the beginning with anthropology and sociology, it really means that we're studying society, we're understanding how different cultures intersect and merge into each other and influence each other. So being abroad and having the opportunity to study abroad brought to me a lot of understanding and knowledge to my own community, to other communities, and made me understand the universality of human rights. There are many things that we share with others. We think that we are isolated in our own societies and communities, and then it turns out that women who are marginalized in Palestine are also marginalized in other contexts around the world. It's not only in Palestine. Women who are victims of gender-based violence as well are not only in our society. Maybe the context is different, but patriarchal structures reflect themselves and influence the lives of women and girls in almost the same way. And therefore, we have to work on dismantling these patriarchal structures, which are an obstacle to women enjoying their rights and enjoying equality and non-discrimination. So that was a very important context. And by the way, my first degree was a field research that I returned back to the country to do in more remote areas in the West Bank and Gaza. And that really, I was in the field for 4 months. So also being on my study, doing work on women in the subcontracting clothing industry, from the general theory of dependency theory, economic dependency theory, or the dependency theory, which I was trying to prove that women are the most vulnerable in a dependent economy. We are heavily dependent on the Israeli economy as being occupied by the Israelis, and the small entrepreneurs in the Palestinian society used to subcontract with Israeli factories, and they used to utilize the cheapest labor force, which is women. Their work was always, not permanent, without any rights, and so on. And I was seeing that day by day, that and whatever disrupts the market, the Israeli market, immediately and first and foremost impacts the lives of these women who are employed on temporary contracts without any rights, without any guarantees if there is no work. And therefore, I've been able to see that more clearly, how the world economy, the world capitalist system tries to utilize, and I made this theoretical background comparing that with Southeast Asia women working in multinational corporations. So, despite the world is a very small village, and you can see how, even when speak about the women's rights in our society, we can link it. Similarly, when I did my other degree, it was focused on the legal responsibility of, when I did my LLM, International Human Rights Law, I focused on the legal responsibility of states to protect women's rights. And I took the case of gender-based violence or violence against women and girls. And I noticed that once the structures are there, and those who are in power sometimes give up their responsibility to protect women. So the legal framework should provide the protection necessary to protect women victims of violence, even if violence takes place at home and within the family. So domestic violence is a legal responsibility on the state to develop policies, legislation, and protection systems to protect victims of violence. And then I came and applied that on the Palestinian context. So the general legal framework always, helps you to look at more at the micro level, and you see the connectivity between the micro and the macro. And that's why I think being exposed to all these experiences, and also interning during my LLM degree, I interned with the in the women's leadership program in New Jersey for a month. And there I also learned more, and I got engaged in the first tribunal, which was made during the Second World Conference in Vienna. So I was exposed to more communities. I've heard of stories of women subjected to different forms of violence, including using the bodies of women, comfort women, as they used to call them, who have been exploited by Japan and Korea during the Second World War in military camps. And these women were, for the first time in the Vienna Second Conference in the tribunal, spoke about their experience. After 50 years, they spoke about how they have been exploited, sexually exploited, trafficked. And therefore, there were many women coming from different parts. Speaking about violence against women or gender-based violence was not very common at the early 90s. So it was like seeing how we are subjected to violence in our society as Palestinians, but also other women around the world face other forms of violence, and they have been silent for so long. Although they have been badly, they damaged their life. They were traumatized. These women were traumatized, and I was still, in my late early 30s, and learning the experiences of others in that tribunal really shaped a lot of how I look at things and how I want governments and states to really be responsible for and be, accountable for their ethical as well as their legal responsibilities.
No, Randa, that is incredible, because even going back to exactly what you're saying, patriarchal societies, any type of structures, interviewing all of you women of agents of change, whether you're from Palestine, Lebanon, Africa, they're all facing the same, same issues, maybe different contexts, as you said. And then what I really wanted to show all the audience, whether you're women, that Randa's story is deeply inspiring, because even in her pursuits of education, and then even going into, to do her, is it your dissertation, Randa, for 4 months? Correct? I mean, in addition to that, there's parts where Randa's still a human being, right? She's also a mother. She traveled and lived in different countries and educated herself while also having a son. So I wanted to show how dynamic her life is and how inspiring it is. Because if you ever think that you're, if you don't have the means to do it, Rand is a perfect shining example of being able to be that inspiration for many women, not only for herself, but to speak on behalf of them. So, what I'd like to ask you too is, how have these personal experiences informed your perspective on gender roles and resilience? You know, I know you touched a lot about that, but I'm gonna go and move.
Actually, yeah, I tried it all. For example, I was, I got to know my husband, which is unusual, at university, at my first degree at Birzeit University in Palestine, in the West Bank. And there I defied my family to marry him, because my family thought that he came from the window and not from directly to ask for my hand. This is the tradition. And therefore, at first, they didn't want me to marry that person. But I married the one I loved, and insisted on staying in the country because I wanted to be in a university where my first love, who is my husband, is at that university. So we got married. Then our marriage, we were very young when we got to know each other. And then our marriage did not work for a while because we were very young. And I wouldn't have learned that, because getting married after school, immediately after university, I was very young. We had our experiences. So we decided to divorce, and we divorced, and I became a single mother. And I know what it means to be a divorced woman in our society. And I know what it really means to be a single mother in our society. My family wanted me to go back to the family home. I defied them. I said, I am a mother. I have the custody of the child. The court gave me the custody of the child. I'm an educated woman. And I defied them because in our society, women always are obliged to go back to the family home if they get divorced. Living on your own is not very common. So I defied that. I said, I want to live on my own. And I did. I wanted to pursue my education. I was divorced. I had the single child son with me. I had to go through the experience on my own. It wasn't easy because also it shapes the difficulties women face when they are single, when are divorced. The stigmatization of the society about divorced women, that they are loose women, that anybody could have an affair with her. So that's also another component that we should know as feminists, that we are going to be in cultural context that the society would not really accept easily. Again, that had to be defined. And then I found out that I want to return. Both my husband was doing his PhD in the States, in UCLA, and we worked out the relationship. It wasn't easy. Again, after a marriage dissolving, then how to rebuild the relationship was not easy. So we had to work on it over 3-4 years. Again, that cousin of my father was seeing me, seeing my husband. And that was like, how come she's divorced? She shouldn't see her ex and go with him for the common events of the child. And I used to spend the weekend with his family, with him in his family home, to be with as a family with my child. So I learned I had to defy the society again, because I didn't want to go back to the marriage before I'm sure about it. And all of that shaped my feminism and shaped understanding what it means to be a married woman, what the society expects from you as a mother and as a single mother, as a divorced woman, and as a woman who wants to live her life without marriage as well, in a society that is not accepting the fact that you do that. So I had my brother-in-law. I had the cousin of my father, the society of all of them trying to treat me badly because I should have taken a position against having any contact with my ex, but I was a civilized person, and my husband was a civilized academic professor at university, and we dealt with it in a very refined way, and we didn't want to become enemy, and we ended up to remarry. So that all shaped my feminism. And this is how I understand women in vulnerable situations, not only in the best times of their lives, but when they defy society, when society stigmatizes them, when they are in unprivileged situations. So that really all only made me more insisting on the gender equality and feminist rights, women's rights in my society, and that girls should have the education, they have to have their independence, they have to be part of the decision-making processes, they have to be politically active in public life, and they can overcome the obstacles. So it's not like knowing it in theory, but also seeing it in practice. So any post that I did, and it also made me tolerant to people with sexual orientations, different sexual orientations than mine. I started to understand that some people are born in with the different feeling of the sex that they were, the gender that they were born in. So among the human rights activists in my society, I always feel myself ready and have the courage to speak about their rights, and that discrimination against LGBT or queer people is wrong. And we shouldn't do that, because human rights are universal and indispensable. And we cannot judge people because of their sexual orientation or any kind of discrimination under which they. So all of it, the exposition to the world, and then coming back, working within my community, going on the ground, sleeping in the homes of these women working in the factories, in the small workshops, made my conviction even stronger, and my insistence on the need to change, and to the need to defy structures that are preventing women from enjoying their rights become stronger.
Randa, I just have to say you're my hero. Honestly, if you're leading this crusade, I'd be following you and supporting you as a fellow sister, as a mother, a single mother. I really honor your authenticity, and to be able to speak this in front of the audience and whoever is going to receive this. I faced the same thing. I got married. After a year, my marriage wasn't working. We separated, and I had to face the same thing. Sometimes parents.
Lisa, this makes us stronger.
It does.
Yeah.
Because our parents mean well. But then I was also going back into society thinking, oh, is anyone gonna want to date me because I'm a single mom with a son? And yet I had to defy those odds and prove myself. And I've stayed single, for many years, including till this day. But I'm so proud of myself because I got to understand myself on such a deep level. And I honor you and the journey that you took. And most especially with what's going on today. What I'd like to ask you, you spoke of how colonialism structures and patriarchy reinforce each other. Can you expand on how the dynamic plays out specifically for Palestinian women?
Very much like that, and it results. They reinforce each other. Colonial occupation and patriarchal structures reinforce each other in every aspect of Palestinian women's lives. Now, the war on Gaza and the military aggression on Gaza that's taking place for over a year and 7 months now, for almost a year and 7 months, has really disproportionately impacted women. Women are taking the burden, of taking care of those injured, of those who have been, the traditional roles within the household and the private sphere versus the public sphere also continues to generate itself times and again of the responsibilities that women have to take on their shoulders. They have to take care of the wounded, those who became disabled, to manage the family when the homes are demolished. They have to ensure the safety of and well-being of the children who can be arrested. She will be blamed by society if the soldiers come and arrest her child because she did not take care of him, allowed him to go out of the home, and that she should have taken care of him much more than she did. In Jerusalem, for example, women became prison guards of their own children. The Israeli policy is sometimes the lawyers make like a compromise when a child is being arrested, that they turn the arrest into home arrests. Instead of being in prisons, the lawyer tries to make a deal with the Israeli military courts in order to keep in the courts to keep the child at home. So instead of being and then they make they make the child be under the supervision of a member of the family during for a certain period of time. Mostly it's women who are taking care of the child and become prison guards, and they cannot allow the children to go out of the home. Many women abandon their jobs to ensure that the children do not leave the home, otherwise they will be re-arrested, or they will be the family has to pay a very big fine as well. So all of that means that she will be blamed if he's arrested. Why did he allow him to go to the rooftop of the house? You should have taken care of him. At the same time, when they are arrested, for example, at home, and this is very common in some areas, especially in Jerusalem, for Jerusalemites, the women become the prison guards. In one case, I do recall, a mother wanted to prevent her child from going out of the home to play with the other kids because they're not allowed to leave the home. And the child was insisting, so she beat the child. There's violence coming in here. And the child lost conscious, and the mother immediately thought that she killed her own son. And she went to crying into the bathroom and so on, until her daughter told her, no, he's okay, he's okay. So imagine the traumatization, the situation. Women have to leave their jobs. Sometimes they are arrested in a family home away from the tension area. And so the mother has to make sure that the family, the other members of the family are taken care of, and that she cooks for them. They come and take the food. She keeps going to and fro between the two homes in order to manage both homes, the grandfather's home, for example, or the uncle's home, where the child is home arrested, and the other homes. In addition, many of the Palestinian women married to Jerusalemites, because of the Israeli policies of family unification and the permit system, which is usually in the hands of the males, the husbands. So the husbands have to apply for the Israeli Ministry of Interior for getting a permit for the women married from the West Bank to live in illegally annexed Jerusalem. Now, if the marriage breaks down for some reason, the women endure violence because the husband could simply stop applying for permits for these women, the annual permit that they take. And if they move illegally in Jerusalem, they will be arrested or they will be deported to other parts of occupied territory. So women endure violence because they might lose the custody of the children, because she is not a resident of Jerusalem, and the best interest of the child is to live where his father lives, where he has health insurance and so on. So what happens is that women are in a vicious circle of violence because of the patriarchal structures, but cannot get out of this circle because there is the Israeli policies that are impacting her life. And that really is, that's why I always say also the husband could stop the process of family unification for the wife. And that is a process that stays for years, sometimes 16, 17, 18 years, without getting full family unification. So that really entails that the women endure violence because they do not want to be prevented from staying with their children. in the place where they live, or because their families, if they get divorced, force them what to do to leave the home and come, and they cannot afford living on their own, and they go back to the family home. And many times, because of economic hardships, the families welcome their daughter, but they don't welcome her children. So we're talking about situations where these patriarchal structures and barriers also impact and influence Israeli policies and crimes committed against Palestinians in the occupied territory. All of that is very much intertwined with each other and enforce each other. And that's why we see a multi-layer of oppression which women face. And the examples are too many. We always do that at WICLA. We document first evidence-based data from individual women. And from the cases we get for legal aid and services in our office in Jerusalem, and the cases that we litigate or provide counseling, we see how it is intertwined with Israeli policies that are creating additional barriers and additional oppression to women. So patriarchal structures. And now, if I would mention another example, is sexual violence being used as a tool to suppress Palestinians and to dehumane Palestinians. And for the first time, we brought a lot of evidence-based data of women who have been kidnapped from Gaza by the Israeli military or arrested, and that have been sexually abused and sexually subjected to violence, threats of rape, and actual rape.
Wow. I mean, Randa, you and I touched this when, when you and I had met, and now you're bringing forth some stories. I mean, this is really, I feel, honestly, I'm honored that you're sharing these stories, and they're very disturbing. What I'd like to do though is, we're going to continue on with a lot of this, but my question is, let's take action. How would you believe global feminist movement should play in supporting women in occupied or colonialized territories? Because let's take some action.
I think that this is the key issue to gender equality. If the global feminist movement remains in their own haven without understanding the vulnerabilities and the penetration of patriarchal structure, colonialism, neocolonialism, liberal policies, and how they're impacting the lives of women, not in Palestine alone. And if we don't show solidarity with women under these colonial occupations or colonial structures anywhere in the world, I think we wouldn't move further. What we need to do is to reclaim our right to gender equality in the way we think is most relevant in our context. What is happening now is that there is a domination of the white feminist movement over all women in the Southern globe. And it is the time now that the feminist movement in the Southern globe to take over and bring in this connectivity between patriarchy, gender equality. To achieve gender equality, it's not only fighting for individual rights. Individual rights are important, but in order to change, you have to dismantle the patriarchal structures and the colonial structures. And if you don't see the intertwining relationship, how they reinforce each other, you will be naive. And you think that you achieve something if you, as I mentioned before, from my experience, individual rights are important. But I think we have seen a shift in the international global system, the global system as a whole, that really shifted towards the domination of the white women's feminist movement, although there's the Black feminist movement and there are the intersectional feminist movement now and many other, and the liberal movements and so on. But I mean, specifically, this is not enough. And I think now what we see because I do engage with the international legal system and international human rights mechanisms, I fully see the shift that the international community did since, for example, the 70s and the 80s compared with now. If we go back 30 years with the Beijing platform of action and the declaration and platform of action, which has been reviewed this year as the 30th anniversary, you notice that the focus has been on the 12 critical issues that look at individual rights without understanding them in the context of the global market, the international multinational corporations, how the capitalist system as a global system is dominating the whole world. You know, after the end of the Cold War, we've seen that speaking about racial discrimination, speaking about racism and Zionism as a racist movement has no more become a topic. Gradually, UN documents, which are developed by the governments with diplomacy, and I know that very well, I'm not naive, I know, we notice that there is a shift towards uh, areas where we become, you know, very much obsessed with our individualistic rights at the expense of fighting against structures that are influencing decision making and power relations in societies. And therefore, without a feminist movement, and I think the global feminist movement did not do much. There has been popular movements supporting the right of Palestinian people to self-determination, but generally the global movement has not done much. It has been widely dominated by the liberal feminist movement, by the white dominated feminist approach to feminism and to gender equality at the expense of the peoples of the world that are vulnerable to militarization, to expansion, to expropriation of other people's land by force, by utilizing the resources of other countries for the benefit of the power, those economic powers that are controlling the markets all around the world. And I don't want to dwell that much, but I think if we want to achieve gender equality, and this is a political issue. If we speak about women's rights, we're not talking about and Palestinian women's rights. It's a feminist issue and it's a political issue. And without having solidarity and working with women from the West, from the North, who believe in the need of dismantle all structures that are an obstacle to gender equality, we're not going to go very far. And basically, the feminist movement in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Middle East, should become a force and demand our rights, to understand our issues in a political way and call on our governments and on the international community to do something about it. But alone, the Palestinian women or women from the southern globe, each working on their own issues without solidarity and global strength that we need, we will not go very far.
I mean, yeah, I fully agree. Randa, I'm even just thinking of a dear friend of mine, even culturally, she's here in the United States. And, you know, without having to go and explain, I'm seeing this played out that even culturally, if they move to the United States, they have the same fears. They experience with their husbands and being able to leave, even if they are on the land of the United States where they have even more rights as women. And yet, culturally, because they're not from here, they still take that fear with them. And so I stand with you as a sister, and as you know, a woman, that the solidarity has to be, whether it's the white feminist movement, black feminist movement, or wherever you are geographically, it's a sisterhood. We have to display the solidarity through love. And now, even just through you explaining that to me, I'm thinking in my own way, how can I extend that to my sisters here?
Yeah, I was speaking to our consultant who was helping us develop the strategic plan for the next 5 years, and I was telling him that we need to work in solidarity with the South. And he said, Randa, if this is the idea you're talking about, then please try to have a think tank group with all those. It could be online now because after COVID-19, we can really connect
Yeah.
online. And it won't cost us much, but to brainstorm with all those who are showing solidarity, develop a strategy, how you want to work it. Otherwise, it will continue to be ink on paper. You have to think of how you
Yeah.
want to move forward. And it requires all the efforts of everybody in our countries, in those who believe of the need to end this inequality at all levels, the economic inequality, the control of powerful countries over the resources of less, the debts that our countries face and are put in that situation. We have to understand it within the global context. The feminist issues are not isolated from the political life that we live in, the economic life we live in, and therefore we should build solidarity among us. That's how we can maybe move forward, but we need to plan. We need to consolidate efforts. We need to exchange and have think tank groups think together. How could we consolidate what I am preaching maybe now into actual action?
No, well, I'm on board, Randa. And I know that after this podcast gets released, I know that there are going to be other women, even men, anyone is invited to all of this. I know women are going to feel the most passionate about it because there's an uprising of their voices being heard. And you're seeing this across the planet. I will actually take some of Randa's work and link it into the description box. If you do have any of that, those groups starting these think tanks and more resources for people to link into, maybe on your website. But Randa,
We need a feminist discourse
yeah,
that penetrates these colonial structures. This is to make the long story. And we started to do that in the MENA region with Arab networks.
you did.
And we need to expand with Africa, with Latin. Yeah, we started during the Commission on Status of Women 69 in New York. We prepared ourselves to bring in that new approach. And we started to advocate for it. But we all agreed, and all our activities were focused on that. But we all believe that it's not the Palestinian people alone. It's not. We need to amplify the voices of Palestinian women because the situation we're living in is a genocidal crimes committed against civilian population that should not be accepted by humanity, not by law even, but by humanity. And we should consolidate efforts to see that feminist issues are political issues, and politics should not be isolated from our calls for gender equality.
You know what? I
Calling for social
absolutely,
justice is calling for women's rights because
absolutely.
we are mostly affected by absence of equality and social justice.
Well, Randa, let me ask you, with global genocidal acts and global injustice becoming televised realities, how do we as a collective keep hope and action alive?
Surely, if we don't keep hope, we go home, and perhaps the last day of my life will be the day when I stop being optimistic. Because we have to keep the energy and the passion and conviction that we can influence change. And that's what I always say to the younger generation, that you are the force that's going to continue the path that we've started. We might have achieved some, and we hope that we can achieve more. But at the same time, I believe that without keeping the hopes that we can do anything, that we are a strong power among all our alliances, not only among men. Also, there is now a lot of men, young men also, that are working. There's this positive masculinity that those are convicted of gender equality. Every place we can build on the small successes we achieve. And gradually, maybe we can move from the small successes into achieving a better world for my son and my grandson, whom I love and cherish seeing him growing. And I want a better future for all the coming generation in Palestine without war, to build peace. And we can be advocates for peace. In, this word, the connotation of peace in the Palestinian context is very bad, is negative. But we want to give it positive, because we want to see social justice, we want to see political justice, we want to see the rights of Palestinian people achieved, to live in a better world than the one we're living in. And that really is the energy that keeps me feeling young. As I grow, I'm approaching my 65 years old, but I feel young because I feel that I want to change. I want to work with the younger generation. I want to share my experience. And I have a lot of conviction that the younger generation have also new tools that we don't use them well, especially with the development of technology, that could make them really change their world around them to the better, where we can all live in dignity and respect to our human rights.
That was, you answered my final questions, which is, what kind of world do you hope we grow up in? What are the roles that you think women's roles in political and social movements will? Well, actually, let me add that. What do you think are the women's roles in political and social movements? How will they evolve in the next generation?
They can evolve I mean, the future is for social movements.
Yeah.
Because they are more grassrooted, they are more linked to the peoples on the ground. So I think there is hope by engaging more of the younger generation and of social movements. Political parties have proven to be ineffective, unfortunately. In our context as Palestinians, we lost hope in political parties, because they have not been able to stand up to the challenges that we see. But I think working with the people, working in communities, meeting the needs of the people at the grassroots, and encouraging people who have rights, the rights holders, because nothing should be done without them. Anything that I strongly believe, if you have a human rights-based approach, you believe that nothing about us without us, and every vulnerable group should be engaged. And that's where we can accumulate achievements, where we can really make the turning point toward achieving change. So we have to keep the optimism despite the gloomy picture around us. I mean, the first thing I want now is to see ceasefire in Gaza. I don't say it's ceasefire. The Israeli military aggression and genocidal crimes against my people, I want them to stop. I want to put all my energy in that direction. I want all the younger generation to use technology, to use new means on social media, to use all the means that we didn't use well, or we don't know how to use them well, in order to advocate. They have the digital advocacy they can do. We can be influencer. We encourage other influencers to come with us. Instead of giving naive or simple or superficial, influencers. We want more influencers who have a cause. I was in the United States during CSW, and I saw the New York Marathon. And I was comparing it with other places in the world. And I said, they're running, they were carrying these banners saying, run as if you have stolen a bank. Run, run, run. To us, when we do marathons and we do them, we run for a cause. We run for the rights of people with disability. We run for the rights of women's rights and gender equality. We run for ending occupation. So we want even things that are not doesn't have a purpose. Run like a person who has stolen a bank. Why? Run because you have a cause. And every one of us should look for what is the cause I want to work for. What is my purpose?
That's so beautifully articulated, Randa. To be honest with you, I'm at almost a loss for words, because not only have you addressed women and the younger generation, but just right now you've addressed the world. And so I, as a fellow sister, hold and share the same vision. And interestingly enough, I am a marathon runner, and I always run with an intention, a global intention. Even if
That's lovely.
yeah,
Even if it's not a global one, but for a cause.
for a cause.
Because I felt like the marathon was like no cause. The banners were not showing a good cause. To
Yeah.
me, I was not able to cross the 42nd Street. And the first time I see the marathon in New York, I wanted to go to the other side of the street. I couldn't. I tried many times. So I stood to see the marathon. It was interesting for me to see it on a Sunday. And it only drew my attention to, yeah, every year we have a marathon in Bethlehem, in the West Bank. But we always run for a cause. Everyone
Yes.
runs for a cause. And I'm happy that you're telling me, Lisa, that you're running for a cause. It could be a global cause, it could be a human cause, it could be whatever cause. But we shouldn't make our life useless. We
Right.
shouldn't think that we do this for the purpose of running. No, we run for something. And this is how I feel that we give a meaning to our life and we keep the hopes for a better future for all of us.
You know, Randa, this is what I'm going to do. You know about my surgery, and maybe by now the audience does about my thyroid surgery. And
Yeah.
it's taken me 6 to 7 months to regain my voice back. But in addition to that, having to come back to marathon running has been it's still a challenge because I almost have a different breathing system. But I'll tell you this, Randa, when I run my next marathon, and I will send you a sign because I'm going to run for this cause. I'm going to support you.
Lovely. I'm so proud to get to know you, and I hope we keep our relationship. And see, it's so a nice coincidence that I bring in the New York Marathon, and then you mentioned that you run for the marathon. And I hope that we can build this sisterhood, because sisterhood is global. And we should really build on achievements of each other. I'm so proud and appreciate our knowing you because we saw a lot of similarities when we talk to each other. And let's maintain this sisterhood.
Absolutely. I just want to say it is a deep honor to have featured you in the Women of Agents of Change, not only for myself, but I'm sure many share the same sentiments as they connect with your story. So, Randa, on behalf of International Peace Bureau and the 8 Billion Podcast, I'd like to thank you for being a guest to this series. You're definitely a shining light to all of us, and I can't wait to share your story.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And I'm also happy to be on this podcast. And, knowing also the colleagues at the International Peace Initiative. And I hope we can maintain this relationship longer and continue contacting each other. I'm looking forward to see this episode as well.
Yes, absolutely. Now, thank you to the audience members who tuned into this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Women of Agents of Change.